Follow the buzzer. Rest in peace. Woo! The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be. What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, coming to you from Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And just want to apologize real quick for not having an episode last week. This is one of those, I guess, examples where you need to listen to your body, not always necessarily for what might be wrong or something might be going wrong with you medically and that you have to see a doctor. No, in my case, I was just so physically exhausted. I mean, I mentioned, several times, but for those who don't remember, I have more than one job. And sometimes I push myself harder than not realizing that you need a break. And probably last Saturday in Clearwater Beach, where I was part of, it was a radio station gig. We were doing promotional work out there. And where was it? It was an outside bar / restaurant. Really small, but well known. Not sure if I can mention their name here. So for now, I'm not saying it, but we were there just for a few hours and giving away a surfboard. Well, not a full-fledged, full-size, full-scale surfboard. It was more like a replica, something they can hang on your wall. And even though we were shaded well, we were given plenty of water to drink throughout the day, and just mingling, having a good time. And on the ride back, I wasn't driving the Sprinter, but my partner was. And on the way back, last thing I remember, I was in the middle of a conversation because I noticed that there was a wedding taking place off to the side on a small beach near one of the bridges that go from one island to another, basically connecting Clearwater to St. Petersburg. And I point that out to my working partner, and we discussed that on how nice it must be, and thankfully it's not raining, and it wasn't scheduled a day or two ago because at that point in time there was a severe thunderstorm, and how horrible that would have been had it taken place at the same time as the wedding. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up. I did not know I fell asleep after that conversation, because I'm waking up and we're about maybe 2-3 blocks away from the station to return the Sprinter, and then from there pick up our vehicles and go home. And my only concern was looking over at my partner. Did I snore? No? Okay, good. All right. I had a energy drink in my bag, maybe finished half of it before I got home, and I was a walking zombie, let's put it that way. For the rest of the day, I was just chilling and enjoying the rest of the day off. And I might have knocked out even early that night. Again, everything's so foggy right now. And I wanted to come here and record what today is episode 105. But my body, my head, my eyes were awake, but the rest of my body was like, no, stay in bed. You need to continue laying down. And if you fall back asleep, even better. My body was just not having it. And sure enough, I just needed a day, or in this case, just half a day. I was still able to do a little chores in the house and take it all in. So thankfully, at least this weekend and next weekend, I don't have anything. I don't have anything scheduled, radio station related. As I realized even then, like, well, they've hired new hands, new faces to fill in what's required for these promotional events. So why not give them a chance to stretch their legs and get a feel for it? I've been doing that for about almost 4 years now, and yeah, not that I'm not gonna pick up on any promotional work that's available, but I figured unless it's one of those remote locations and maybe one of those 12-hour long gigs where obviously sounds like you're going to be there all day. And I've done them before. Hell, I've done 2 back-to-back 16-hour days for an air show. I think, when was that? Back in March, April? A lot of fun, but of course I took the following weekend off. But Monday through Friday that week, exhausted. So in other words, I'm just trying to balance everything out where I'm going 6, 7 days in a row working into the following week doing the same thing and not having a break in between. And I'm not getting any younger, so I just figured, you know what? Yeah, take a break when you can, and I'm good. As far as employment wise, and that is that I had a third job. I can't complain. I'm happy when I go to work. I'm happy when I go home. Happier when I go home, and for the most part, as far as the station goes, I enjoy working with everybody. So if you're able to, and if you're still eager and young enough to do this yourself, yeah, pace yourself will be my best advice, especially if you're able to control one of those schedules. And I guess the only downside of it, if you want to call it that, if someone else can't make it and you're always the person that's not going to say no, they're going to call you. And because you don't want to be the bad guy either, you're going to say yes. And you'll be going in on something last minute, unexpected on your day off. So I don't look forward to those times, but it's the nature of the beast. And it's pretty much what I signed on for. So I cannot get too upset or too mad at myself about it. Well, as I said, took a week off and I needed it. I needed to recharge the battery a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is backtrack a little bit of some of the stories that I would have mentioned last week and mix in some of the stories that took place this week and throw in some, opinions about that and my thoughts about it. So here we go. First off, congratulations to Casey Lee and Sean Spears, who announced earlier last week on August 3rd, to be exact, that they are expecting their first child. So if you remember, I want to say about a month or so ago, give or take, there were fans that were asking the Inspirations whether or not they're coming back to Impact Wrestling or back to wrestling in general. And their response basically was yes, but for now we're gonna walk away from it. For now, they will eventually, and I'm just paraphrasing here, to walk away for now and eventually come back to it later on. Little did we know that in one of their cases, Casey Lee, and I'm speculating that maybe she was already planning to have a family. Maybe her and husband Sean Spears had discussed this ahead of time before answering questions about returning to wrestling. Who knows? But yeah, definitely congratulations. Couldn't be happier for them. And see who is going to be a boy or a girl. Paige, well, the wrestler formerly known as Paige, Soraya Jade Beavis, she was on the Bella's podcast talking about returning to the ring and shared her current status physically, saying, "My neck is fantastic. I'm having so issues with it." I believe she meant to say some issues with it. And it's looking good. I still want more time though. I've had nearly 5 years completely out of the ring, which is true. That's a long time. Oh, yes, others have been out longer for legitimate reasons when it comes to post surgery or post severe injury that there's no coming back. Uh, before Paige, formerly known as Paige, falls under that category, and it was a scary time. That drop kick or the two kicks to the back of her shoulder blades / neck, giving that whiplash effect from Sasha Banks. And I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not blaming Sasha Banks in any of this, by the way. You know, everyone has had their discussion about it. Oh, Sasha's fault. She shouldn't have done that. Hey, did you see last night's SmackDown match between Shinsuke Nakamura and Gunter? Almost said Walter. Towards the end, and I pointed this out to a friend of mine, that Gunter did the exact same move to Shinsuke. And Shinsuke's fine, even after having history of injury with his shoulders. And the difference was Sasha was against the corner. So basically the ropes were holding her up, not to mention giving her the extra boost to kick up and out towards Paige's shoulder blades, causing the whiplash effect and then into the neck injury. Compared to last night, Walter had a running start, running from one corner to the other where Shinsuke was. Even though Shinsuke wasn't on his feet, he was on his knees. So basically delivering a lower version, a downside version of the dropkick between the shoulder blades. Shinsuke still had that whiplash effect, but he wasn't severely injured. And probably because, and I'm no doctor, I'm just speculating, probably because Paige had serious neck injuries before, probably played a huge part in it. I mean, I was going to talk about the Kurt Angle biography, and he's broken his neck about a half a dozen times. I was aware about maybe half of those, but what do you say, 6, 7 times? Jeez. But he kept going, so it's unfortunate. Not to mention, it's probably a mental thing, a psychological thing, why Paige isn't pushing more to get back in the ring sooner as her fans wanted to see or want her to do. But it's her choice. Kurt Angle made his choice after each neck break to have it fixed as soon as possible, to recover as soon as possible, and get back into the ring as soon as possible. So if you're asking me, there's no rush. Once you feel good mentally, psychologically, get the feel back, like the passion back, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Not that she doesn't have any, but she's missing it, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But we'll see one day after being officially released from WWE, or what then technically speaking, her contract expired. Maybe further down the line, I know AEW expressed interest in bringing in Paige. Of course, you can't call her that anymore if that happens. But time will tell. Just like any other severe injury after surgery, it takes time. Then again, you also got the rehab time. I was gonna talk about this later, but CM Punk made a surprise return this week on AEW Dynamite, and he's hopping around, he's jumping, he's skipping, running, looking good as if the injury has never happened. Almost what they say, about 6 months sooner than expected. Even on commentary, if you go back and listen to it, if you still have it recorded on your DVR or it might be on YouTube somewhere, even Jim Ross said that CM Punk, as far as he knows, is not medically cleared to return. Technology's come a long way, especially in the medical field, where you can have, okay, put it this way. Growing up, I've had relatives that would have surgery that required doctors going in, opening you up with a scalpel, and finding whatever's damaged, whatever's broken, fix it, replace it, whatever they have to do. In those days, and I'm sure if you have great grandparents or grandparents today that are thankfully still with you, and if you ever see them with a tank top or without a shirt, and you see those long gnarly scars going across their stomach or their chest cavities, yeah, they were alive during the time or present during the time where that was the actual surgery. So what you used to see in horror movies to split you open, that's how surgeries were performed. Looking back, how exactly, if your focus is saying maybe on the liver, but yet other organs are exposed for some reason. Not to go too far into that, but versus today's techniques, if you're lucky, you get a 1-inch incision. And they'll slide in there whatever tools they need to fix, of course, with a mounted micro camera. And they'll sit there as if they're fiddling around with joysticks and fix what they got to fix. And okay, recovery time, you can leave probably you can have surgery like that and leave the same day probably. Back then, no, you were stuck in the hospital for a week or so. Make sure you're all right, pass all the physicals post-surgery, and then you're gone. So, so yeah, I haven't gone through anything like that. Although, if you want to count, well, I guess yeah, I had an issue with gallstones, so my gallbladder had to be removed. So now I got a scar right underneath my rib cage, and it's at least an inch or so long, and it's healed up pretty well. And the surgery took place late in the day, so I probably wasn't going to leave overnight. And either way, they just wanted to keep me for observations anyway, and I will leave the next day. Thankfully, not surgery. That's what I had. My insurance took care of all that, so I was perfectly fine. And moving on, never had an issue with it yet. Although I might have another issue or two going on internally, but surgery can only do so much. But enough about me. Speaking of good health, Hacksaw Jim Duggan has fully recovered after being diagnosed with cancer, and is now for the second time, by the way, and is now cancer-free. He went home. The tough guy was able to ring the bell, as all cancer patient survivors do when they leave the hospital, and he's given a clean bill of health. So, Hall of Famer, home, here's to you, buddy. As expected, and I'm gonna have not an insight. What am I saying? You know what? Let me get a little refreshment here. It's been sitting in this bag for a minute. A little refreshing thirst. Yeah, what's it called? Well, either way, it's not a sponsor, so I probably won't mention it. But it's a sports drink and low on sugar. So, get this out the way. There have been numerous reports of Triple H being hard at work and reaching out to past released and former WWE talent. Many names are being thrown around as a shoo-in for a comeback, which is a positive for many to get that second chance for the company. And as I always say, I'll believe it when I see it, and I believe I mentioned this last time. Well, since that particular post on my social media about Triple H working hard, reaching out to previous talents, so far we've seen Karrion Kross return with Scarlett, as it should have been originally. Dexter Lumis, who had a bit of a cameo towards the end of last Monday Night Raw, who more than likely had been involved in a little car accident backstage that really didn't get too much attention other than being in the background. And just last night, Hit Row returned, but not as a foursome, but rather a 3-person faction, because one of them was in AEW. Here's my concern, not to be confused with anything else. This is my concern. If we rewind the clocks back about 3 years, give or take, and see how many talents were released. Some of them were agents, others were employees and whatnot, but let's just focus on the wrestlers, male and female wrestlers that were released from WWE in the past 3 years. It's over 100. I dare say pushed maybe 200. That's from NXT and from the main roster. The general reason given back then was they had nothing creative for them to do, so let's just cut ties now and basically stay at home with the remaining of your contract that you'll get paid for, and probably had signed a non-compete clause for the next 30 days, for the next 90 days. And may or may not return later on or find work elsewhere, such as AEW, New Japan, AAA, MLW, what have you. So slowly but surely, we're seeing familiar faces return. I know there's a large amount of fans out there that want specific people to return, such as Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, just to name a couple. Especially Sasha Banks and Naomi, which I got a feeling that's probably connected to the tag team women's tournament going on. But that's just my opinion. My concern is, what if history repeats itself? Not that Triple H is going to bring back every single wrestler that's been released that is not under contract with anyone else. But what if it gets overcrowded again? And I'm pretty sure that's not one of the main reasons, but one of the smaller reasons why some of these people were released to begin with. Not to mention, if you're not always relying on bringing back a Hall of Famer or a legend to fill in a spot, you bring back someone else, and now what are they going to do besides just make a cameo or have a 5-minute match on Raw or SmackDown, and thanks for coming, we'll see you in 3 weeks again. So that's my concern. And again, this is the what many have factually been calling the Triple H reign or the Triple H regime or whatever, post Vince McMahon. Is there a way? Does Triple H have that big of a vision where, let's say, in the Attitude Era, everyone had a storyline going on? Hell, even back in the late 80s, early 90s, when Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge was a thing, you wouldn't see the same people every weekend. You just wouldn't. Not to mention, those shows were only 1 hour. And if they were involved in a heavy angle, say for a championship or a big deal, big time rivalry with someone else, there'll be a video package, or they'll have their news reports with Lord Arthur Hayes or Mean Gene Okerlund. I just don't want to see history repeat themselves. And a lot of the people that were released were just dealt with really wrong. Never thought of getting a second chance, much less let them stay home for a little bit, not to live off the remaining of their contract, but to, okay, we'll figure something out, we'll contact you, you'll come back, and legit stick to their word, and they're coming back a month or so later. So just to recap, that's my concern, that it doesn't get too overcrowded with all these returns. I do have one suggestion, and I kind of mentioned it a minute ago. Do we have to know, by today's standards, and a lot of you, mostly the younger fans, mostly even newer fans of pro wrestling, specifically with WWE, are probably going to disagree, and that's fine, because the way things have been going as of late for the past, say, 5 years or so, the way SmackDown and Raw have been structured, and from a production point of view, that's what you're pretty much used to. That's what you're programmed to expect every week, where a storyline, an angle is continuing from 1 week to another with the same people every week. Nowadays, the only difference is they'll remove one participant. For example, the Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns saga going into Clash at the Castle. Do we have to have Roman Reigns? Well, then again, that's his current contract anyway, so he doesn't have to be on live TV, much less be at house shows every time, every weekend, every live show, every TV taping, whatever. That's his deal. And he's the world champion. So removing Roman Reigns, the storyline still continues with the Usos. And they're the tag team champions, and I'm mixing in a lot of stuff here. So focus on the women's tag team tournament, but the males tag team champions, which have 2 sets of titles, let's not focus on mixing them in with another tag team because they just got done with the Street Profits. They got done with Randy Orton and Riddle. So let them mess with McIntyre until then. And they kind of did that this week, even though Roman Reigns wasn't there last night on SmackDown. Karrion Kross was, and maybe for a couple of minutes recapped what took place and what to expect. So he's lurking somewhere in the back. He's watching and, for lack of a better term, stalking Drew McIntyre. And besides that promo backstage, we did not see Kross again. Why can't you take a break from one angle to introduce another one, or pick up where another one left off from 2-3 months ago? Like, for example, I know Kevin Owens supposedly had traveling issues at one point to continue the Ezekiel storyline, but I guess they killed that off this past Monday, literally having Kevin Owens powerbomb Ezekiel on the apron on the outside of the ring. And I guess that's done, because at no point besides a little slip up running up the steps to get in the ring, Kevin Owens didn't get on the microphone, continually calling Ezekiel a lie of who he really is. And another example, yes and no, but Max Dupree, the former Eli Drake, was put back into the mix of his male modeling agency, or whatever it's called, with Maxine now, and Mason. I'm not pronouncing that, whatever accents they put in there. Mason Mansoor, that have yet to still officially debut in the ring as a tag team, but that took a break for about 2 weeks. I guess there were. My impression is, after the reports came out of Max Dupree is difficult to work with, he's giving out suggestions that no one's listening to, and he's getting upset about it, and blah, 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 blah. Ironically, that was around the same time McMahon stepped away, and one of his last actions that he did was remove Max Dupree from the male modeling agency angle, or faction, or whatever you want to call it. Vince leaves and step in Triple H. Maybe they had a talk. Maybe there were some agreements where, okay, between Triple H, Max Dupree, and the writing staff, the rest of the creative. If Triple H says something along the lines with, like, guys, creative, if a talent, a wrestler, has a suggestion or an idea that goes along with what you're doing, or goes along what's already been done, or even just a slight little suggestions of a change here and there, don't cross that T but dot that I, or vice versa. Listen to them. They're the ones going out there going to do this thing. You're expecting to go bit by bit, by the page, by down to the T, down to the letter that's in the scripts. Again, for lack of a better term that they have backstage, and expect the talent or the wrestlers to perform it flawlessly. And sometimes you can see the frustrations when, especially on live TV, like, oh, that didn't go well, that wasn't the best performance or the best effort, but they made it through. I hope something along those lines took place, and that's why we're seeing Max Dupree back in the agency role of models and whatnot. It was short, it was brief, but the what the hell did they call him again? Looks like the first feud with the modeling agency males, or whatever they call them, Triple M, going to be with Angel Garza and oh my goodness, I forgot his cousin's name. Humberto, jeez, wow, those guys. Sorry. But it looks like that's going to be their first feud moving forward. Maybe next week on SmackDown they'll start a tag team match. Who knows? Thunder Rosa last week on Dynamite, teaming up with Tony Storm, sporting a T-shirt that apparently is available on sale at AEW Shop. Sandbagging. Now, seeing a few of Thunder Rosa's matches as far as back as the Eva Elise match that they had about 2 years ago. Now, I'm not taking anyone's side on that. It's between the two wrestlers at the time and the promoter, and whatever was decided by those individuals to move forward from it. And if there was ever lessons learned from it, who knows? That's, again, you got to ask that individual. But for example, I've seen more Thunder Rosa's matches than I have seen Eva Elise's, and not to get too much into it, but Rosa, her style of wrestling can be stiff looking at times. Accidents do happen, but that's not the excuse every single second for what happens in the match. For example, again, back to the Gunther and Shinsuke Nakamura match last night on SmackDown. They beat the living hell out of each other. Everybody walked away with bruises. You want an example of an accident? During the women's tag team tournament match, Raquel Gonzalez, or what's Raquel Rodriguez now? Geez, stop changing their names. She was doing her second rope, or was it, what do they call it? She jumps off the second rope with her back turned to her opponent and basically drops a senton, or usually an elbow. She miscalculated and mistimed that maneuver, landing on poor Shotzi's face. And moments later, you see that Shotzi has a bloody lip, possibly a cut lip, more than likely probably going to be swollen. That's an accident. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't intentional. And not to mention, it was at that point in the match, everything was picking up pace, heading towards the end of the match, where, by the way, Aaliyah and Raquel went to advance in the tournament. So now you think Thunder Rosa stiff, or sandbagging. The match that she had, who was it with? Was it with Britt Baker? I could see why. But honestly, if there's no reason behind it, from Thunder Rosa's point of view, doing what you did to sandbag. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Britt Baker. It was Maria Shafir, if I pronounced her name right. And yeah, I could see the spots where people thought that she's sandbagging. Again, did I see it like that? Yes, I saw it like that. Did I take it like that? And there is a difference. No. One or two things crossed my mind. And again, I'm not defending anyone here. But when it comes to spots like that, and you're wrestling a veteran, usually you might want to listen to the veteran. Now, if Thunder Rosa wasn't injured and reaching a point in time in the match to take a specific bump that she wasn't ready for, she was probably not going to do it. Or just call an audible, and maybe Shafir was too early on that spot. Because I remember there was an issue with a few suplex maneuvers that appeared that Rosa wasn't cooperating with. But you know what? At the end of the day, what the hell do I know, right? This is all speculation on my part. There might have been more to it. So out come the cries of Thunder Rosa sandbagging. She, doesn't work well with others and blah, blah, blah. The whole point of that, especially coming out last week, speaking on Busted Open Radio, she's using that sandbag T-shirt as a way to make money, basically. What she say? Her quote was, "So using the sandbag T-shirt is a way for me to say, keep bullying me because I'm going to make money out of it. I'm going to own it. Not a sandbagger." So in other words, kind of like John Cena did a few years ago, embrace it, enjoy the hate, and the whole, it didn't go so well, but acknowledging the fans boo him, even though he's a baby face, especially at that time period where he was still being shoved down everybody's throat. But to each his own. And not everyone's been in the ring, much less in front of a crowd like that, to understand and really appreciate the atmosphere and the gravity of the whole situation. So I can only say so much about it. And if I'm wrong in any way, so I'm wrong. Either way, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. A pre-trial hearing has been set for September 26th for former WWE competitor / talent / wrestler, whatever you want to call him, Cain Velasquez, facing multiple charges, including attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, shooting an occupied motor vehicle, just to name a few charges. And Velasquez has pleaded not guilty. I hope things work out for him, considering the circumstance as to why he did what he did, allegedly. And for those who don't know, well, you're going to have to Google that, because I'd rather not discuss that here. It's a very sensitive and, well, let's just say it's a sensitive topic. And for anyone else that's been in that scenario or knows someone that's been in that scenario, I'm not going to say you would have done the exact same things, but chances are similar thoughts could have crossed your mind to allegedly pull off. But, I mean, there was damage done on Velasquez's part, and rightfully so, again, for the reasons that he believed did it for. But I just hope the judge is a bit lenient and understanding. I'm not saying that Velasquez doesn't deserve any kind of punishment, at the minimum amount at the very least, but we'll see what happens. As I mentioned earlier about Karrion Kross and Scarlett returning to WWE, there are now reports that, unconfirmed for the most part, but again, it's conflicting because nothing's changed, at least on television. And they got plenty of time to still fulfill this, heading towards to Clash of Champions. Clash at the Castle. As it stands right now, it's Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns for the Undisputed Universal title. Reports are saying now that throwing in Karrion Kross into the mix, either a triple threat at the Castle, or afterwards, Kross will be involved in a title match with Roman Reigns, but not for the Undisputed Championship, rather for one of the championships that Roman Reigns carries. So in other words, there are reports of possibly splitting the titles yet again. And I couldn't agree more. Yes, it's kind of hurting Raw and SmackDown, where the world champion from either show doesn't appear. And again, I cannot stress the fact enough that they did this the first time when they unified the titles back in 2001, 02, and the Undisputed Champion was allowed to be on both shows and open up a number of different possibilities of storylines and angles. Because at the time, if you're working with Chris Jericho on SmackDown here, then you're working with Kurt Angle on Raw on the other, and you're the Undisputed Champion. And Jericho and Angle should not have crisscrossed each other. Maybe at the pay-per-views, which the time was allowed before they split those up. But unless it was too much for the writing team at the time and creative at the time, that's just too much. Let's just keep one champion on one show. And how many more times after that did they unify them? To split them up again and then unify them again. It was, make up your mind. What is it going to be? And the draft has all been but a joke, especially the last two. What was it? Something about 3 or 4 SmackDown members can cross over with some kind of pass. I don't know what the hell they called it. It was like really, really dumb. But that all within their own company, that's taken away opportunities from others for being on television at the very least, and not just be demoted to the main event on a streaming service that not everybody watches. If you split the titles again, and it means that there'll be a world champion on both shows that will show up at least every week, I'm for that. Again, it opens up different possibilities. But I'm still sticking to taking a break a week or so from one main storyline to introduce new ones and then go back to it the following week. Is Karrion Kross going to be WWE champion or Universal champion? I'm not saying that, but that's just talk that's been going around to get him mixed up in the title scene and the main event. But we'll see. I mean, don't know if the triple threat will take place. It's not been decided how involved Karrion Kross is going to be, even though his sights is set specifically on Drew McIntyre. Because the tease there last night, we see Scarlett come out, doesn't get on the microphone, just steps into the ring, has a face-off with Drew McIntyre, but once the lights were already on, but once the color comes back, you see the Usos attack McIntyre from behind, and no Karrion. Whatever the Usos said was hard to make out, but to Scarlett, tell your man to watch his back or something like that, and Scarlett replied again to the effect of, tell Roman the same thing. So no interaction with the Usos and Karrion Kross. I mean, either way, he'll be outnumbered. But basically, there's a three-way angle going on there. So how much of this? Again, they got plenty of time to change all of this since Kross has returned, and we'll see. We just got to wait around and see. Did I mention this? No, I didn't. Not on my last show. This happened this past week. John Laurinaitis is officially out of WWE, and apparently he's been out of the company for more than a week. Those accusations built up to a point where he was involved in the investigation with Vince McMahon, which, by the way, more, or not hush money, but unrecorded amounts of finance have been discovered in somewhere in the neighborhood about $5 million. Apparently there's more to the story, but because of its nature, I don't want to get into it because that's not what I want to discuss on my programs. But it does involve Vince. His name was mentioned with the $5 million, allegedly, that went unrecorded with the company. And now, during that discovery, Laurinaitis was released. And my understanding, he's still under investigation. And let's just say it's not looking too good right now, and that's just my opinion. So out of curiosity, I'm sure many of you have thought this, where's Dark Side of the Ring? It's been more than a year since we've seen new episodes and no announcements have been made for new ones to come. I don't know if there was some kind of discussion between Dark Side of the Ring and WWE with A&E with their biography series debuting this year. Because Dark Side of the Ring seems to be taking a different direction. They have now teamed up with The Rock and his Seven Bucks Productions, along with Danny Garcia, to introduce Tales from the Territories, a new documentary series that will take place on Vice TV, debuting later on this year. Interesting. Not Dark Side, but Tales from the Territories. I think instead of just focusing on one incident or one individual, as Dark Side of the Ring was doing, and kudos, what was it, 2 or 3 seasons? Amazing episodes, amazing stories, and they were able to deliver as much as they could in a 1-hour episode. And many would suggest that, well, some of those episodes were only one-sided. True, but unfortunately, some of the topics or some of the individuals that were the focus on, A, no longer with us, or B, refused or just denied participation in said episode. And there can always be a counter argument or a counter discussion, and have the person who refused or declined to be a part of have their own episode released somewhere maybe on their social media to counter whatever was said on the episode that they weren't in. So a lot of ways you can go with that. But what's interesting here, now focusing on territories, there was no word how long these episodes will last, 1, 2 hours. And I think it's a great thing to educate newer fans from the past, let's say 10 to 15 years, maybe a little more, that never heard of the territories, probably just had in their mind that WWE is the end all to be all only to have AEW recently emerge, MLW, Japan, AAA, or whatnot. There's more than meets the eye when it comes to pro wrestling. Not every story has been shared, or much less been researched enough and passed around enough. That who knows how many backstage stories they are. They probably wouldn't have enough time. Put it this way: there are more. I believe there are more backstage stories, time-wise, talking years, maybe decades to tell, versus how many hours of WWE contact is on Peacock. Content, I meant to say, not contest. But there's just stories on top of stories, behind the stories, inside the stories, after, before the stories, stories to tell the stories. Unfortunately, just not enough time to tell them all. And some talent, some wrestlers, managers, agents, what have you, they've written books, and there's some stories in there. They tell them on their podcast. They share them on other means of media. But to really dig into the territories from, I would guess to say as early as the 1900s, yeah, it'd be great educational programming for a lot of people, especially in today's society. That if you're following wrestling, that you'll learn a little something. And here's a little bit of inside trivia. Did you know that former President Abraham Lincoln was a wrestler? Maybe not in a squared circle, but apparently was a very good Greco-Roman grappler during his day. I'm not sure if he was doing that during his presidency. That's the one thing I didn't look into, but that deserves a nice Google search. Jeff Hardy's lawyer filed for motion this past Wednesday, waiving Hardy's right to a speedy trial. Once again, pushing back the date of his trial from July 5th, originally that was going to take place on July 5th, pushed it back to August 2nd, which would have been this past Tuesday. And once again, reschedule it for August 17th. So another week from now. Actually, no, a few days from now. This was a concern by many that the judge or the court in general was just asking for this to take place now. The trial of Jeff Hardy with his DUI, and finding, I believe, allegedly finding substance in the vehicle when he was pulled over, driving under the influence and all that stuff. So it wasn't immediately, but basically after Hardy bounded out of prison, he went to rehab. He's been there ever since, as far as I know. Nothing else has been reported otherwise. And since then, the courts have been pushing for the case, the trial, to happen now. My opinion is the man's trying to rehab. Now, I'm not saying if Hardy leaves the facility of the rehab center and escapes, just runs away from preventing himself from getting into the trial. No, I'm not saying that. The man's trying to recover. Hopefully he's learned and realized his mistakes. And how many more second chances can he get? And he's not getting any younger either. Why interrupt that? The man is trying to get well. Like talking about the surgery conversation earlier. No, stop the surgery halfway. He needs to be in the courthouse right now. You can't have it both ways, I don't believe. Fortunately and thankfully, the judge, the courthouse have been lenient, have been considerate enough, understanding this fact, or if it is a fact, I'm stating it as if it's my opinion. But I do believe this is what's happening. In any case, the judge and the courthouse showing leniency that, okay, give him X amount of more time, but this trial is going to happen one way or another. And for some reason, I believe they declined commencing with the trial while having Jeff Hardy, partake, not in person, but through video chat. via satellite. And that was declined or shut down for some reason. Is that they need to have Jeff Hardy live in the living color. Well, we're playing the waiting game once again and see whether or not this goes anywhere. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know, there's another similar case going on with another former WWE talent, which shall remain nameless because I'm so personally disappointed. Especially not taking responsibility, but whatever. Hopefully the judge in the Jeff Hardy case doesn't throw the entire book at Jeff. I was talking about the Cain Velasquez situation. If the judge understands the situations, it won't be as harsh. But with Jeff Hardy, I mean, how many times has he been here? I'm not saying throw half the book at him, but I don't know. I really don't know. I know a lot of people have given up on Jeff. It's really disappointing, and we talk as if we know the man personally. But seeing him on TV so many times, gone to his meet and greets, and I was fortunate enough to meet the man once, and he ended up putting on a concert afterwards. Very humble, very polite, very respectful, and would take the time to speak to the fan. The handlers, the promoters would say, "Okay, you only got 2 questions to ask, and 1 picture or whatever." No, once you got to Jeff Hardy, like, "No, man, I'm getting, one other picture, sure. What? Want me to sign this too? Yeah, I'll sign that. What? Got another question?" He takes his time, and not everyone can do that. Presumably because if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't be where he is now, as far as a wrestling career goes, and his success, and able to perhaps live the life he always wanted to live. Along the way, there are speed bumps. I'm sure we all have had our own bumps in the road, and how to recover from those as well. But not to dwell on this too much longer. Hopefully Jeff will be all right. And if it means prison time, then so be it. Pay a fine, community service, what have you. I'll end with this, and I briefly mentioned this earlier about the whole CM Punk returning to AEW Dynamite this week and confronting Jon Moxley. So it'll be eventually, and reports are pushing for the match to take place at AEW All Out in September. CM Punk versus Jon Moxley to unify the AEW World Title. Maybe. I mean, we're talking post-surgery here. And although Punk moved around very discreetly and was able to fend off a lot of the, what did they call them, the Jericho Appreciation Society or whatever. He looked good. But that was only maybe a couple of minutes. We're talking a match with Jon Moxley, which can get very physical. And unless they throw in a stipulation in there of no DQ, street fight, or whatever nonsense, it's going to go at least half an hour, and Punk would have to be extra careful. I'm not saying he can't pull it off. I'm not saying he can't handle it. But shortly, been 2 months, give or take, about having his surgery. And now it's going to be thrown back in there. But I'm sticking to what the comment of Jim Ross said, that as far as he knew at that point in time, when Punk made his return, that he wasn't medically cleared to return into the ring. And there haven't been any reports then either. Nothing online suggesting that Punk has been medically cleared to return and stepping into the ring so soon in a month's time. Either way, it will be a hell of a match. Either way, it'll be interesting to see, well, do you have Punk unify the titles and pick up where you left off, or continue where you would have been had he not been injured? And what happens to Moxley? Yeah, he's still a main event guy. He's still a top guy, don't get me wrong. But now what? And essentially, you got 2 baby faces here squaring off for the title. And sometimes that could be a little tricky. And thankfully nowadays, they're not forcing the fans to choose a side. Like, no, enjoy what you're getting. And then maybe still appreciate both athletes after the match. And whatever you got storyline wise setup or what the promoter wants to book afterwards to make the one who lost the match to keep him a face or turn him heel. Tune in, and we'll definitely be talking about that once that happens, and be very interesting television this week on Dynamite, because I'm pretty sure Punk's going to come out and cut a promo and acknowledge whether or not he's going to be medically cleared. I think if that's the case, I think that's what they're saving it for. Let Punk tell you. If he's cleared right now, he's going to save that to Dynamite. If not, there's still time to rehab his injury and make the announcement much later on. Meanwhile, have Moxley face other challengers to kill time, I guess. But yeah, that draws my conclusion of the Jam Report this week. I know it's coming back after a week off and seemingly, I guess, time consuming, I guess, this week. But getting back into the game, it's not as easy as it sounds. And I can only make these comments so many times. But working on it, trying my best. That is into balancing everything out. And, just be happy. I'm speaking for myself. Just be happy. There could be a moron on the road heading back home and cut you off or whatever. But you know what? Hope you run out of gas. Hope you get a flat tire or something. Nothing too vicious. Nothing too harsh. Just know that you suffered from my grief. Anywho, well, thanks for listening. If you got any comments, please share them down below. Like, subscribe, and share on my social media. So everyone, behave, be good, be well. Until next time.
Today, I found the strength to open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind and realize that your beautiful world could take my life.